Mike Halloran is no expert in skating, but he's still made quite an impression on Tony Hawk's life.
I met Mike through the sort of music skate scene. You know, he was an integral part in anything San Diego, like punk rock based. I mean, he was one of the guys that was, you know, helping get the bands here.
Their worlds intersected, and Tony became an instant fan of Mike's on 91X.
He wasn't just a DJ, he was an expert on all the music. So that really stood out in my mind, is that this guy knows these bands, knows what he's talking about.
Hey, radio stations, FM 94.9, Radiohead.
Because anytime someone would mention a band or a member of a band or like an auxiliary member of a band, he could name all the projects that guy was ever involved with. And at some point it was just like, he's a personal Google of punk rock.
All right, we got one more call here.
Tony's paid close attention to Mike's style on the radio for his own radio show on Sirius.
You're actually challenging me on the subject?
It's pretty freestyle, but I think I learned a lot doing his shows initially, because I actually did the first coup d'etat. He started the coup d'etat to just bring in guests and let them play what music they love.
It's that love of music that links them and keeps Tony tuned to 94.9.
I think he's influenced my life in that it seems that the music that I love is more tangible and more real, as opposed to this sort of untouchable person that's creating it and I'll never know about them or who they are. I think Mike Halloran has given San Diego its own identity in terms of radio, because truly 94.9 is one of the best stations out in the U.S.
So you're back in the States, trying to figure out what to do. I mean, you had a job, running for a film company and doing a little audio, this and that, but you really don't have a direction, and you see an ad for a broadcasting school. Now, that's kind of a cliche in the business, but not back then.
No, back then it was, there was two things that were happening. Late night television and radio had ads for truck driver school or broadcasting school. And
we know which one you and I picked.
Yeah, I was watching these things late at night and going, maybe, maybe not. But what convinced me was this kid called John O'Leary. I say he's a kid, he's older than me, but he was a kid at the time on the radio in Detroit. But I called him up one day and I'm like, why don't you play this kind of band on the radio? Oh, we don't play that because, well, nobody cares about it. And you remember, this was Genesis I was talking about, before Peter Gabriel left the band. Because Genesis were a huge band in England. I'd come back to the States in the summertime and call disc jockeys up and ask them why they weren't playing certain bands, this pre-punk era. After a while, John O'Leary goes, you know, why don't you just go to a broadcasting school and learn how to do this and then get your own radio show? And I thought, oh yeah.
He was blowing you off.
He was, well, he'll tell you today, if you ever asked him, he'll tell you today he wasn't blowing me off, but as far as I was concerned, he's like trying to get rid of me.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, screw this guy, I'm going to basically prove him wrong. And I found out that he went to this broadcasting school in Detroit called Specs Howard, legendary broadcaster from the Midwest, who started off his own broadcasting school basically to take guys like me who thought, you know, we know what we're doing, and, you know, I'll just show you how to run the crazy equipment that we have here, and then off you go. Well, that's pretty much what I did. So it was a 9-month course. After 5 months, I started volunteering at DET, which is the NPR station in Detroit. Because the way I looked at it was, if I was in school 3 times a week learning this stuff, why don't I take what I've learned already and go down and volunteer at the public station to take it to the next level? They hired me on a volunteer basis to get up every Sunday morning and engineer the opera show, the classical show, the music of the black church, and you know, various shows where I was just basically, I was a DJ.
You're running the board.
Yeah, I never had to say anything on the air though.
Yeah.
It was all voice track stuff from, you know, these, you know, what I thought were old guys at the time, you know, talking about, you know, Shostakovich and Rachmaninoff and all these crazy people that meant nothing in my life at that point. And within 9 months, I'd finally graduated. I volunteered for a long time and then used to basically just kind of annoy them until they gave me my own show. So that's kind of how it all started.
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, didn't you do a fundraiser? I mean, wasn't your first gig? You were still a kid. I mean, you were like 18 or something.
18, I think. Yeah, 18 at the time.
And they were doing the pledge drive, and so they said, yeah, all right, here, take an hour.
They said, why don't you just, you know, kind of like, hey, if you think you know what you're doing, here's this little pledge period. It's, you know, an hour, 2 hours long on a Friday afternoon. Play whatever you want to play. Just make sure that after every record you tell people to call in and pledge money to the radio station. And I was, I'd heard them a million times. I'd engineered them a million times for other people. And I thought, okay, I can do this. So I walked on the air, played really weird records as far as they were concerned, and basically extorted money in between songs.
But do you remember the first time you hit the button to talk into that it was actually going to go out?
I don't think I actually remember that first time because I was probably so scared. But after probably the first couple of breaks, once the phone started, because once the phone rings and you could hear the phone banks going ding in the background, suddenly it's like,
somebody's
oh wow,
listening.
Somebody's listening, somebody cares. So at that point it was like, I need to extort more money from them. Because I think the idea was, and even though in the back of my mind I didn't know if it was going to happen or not, if I could raise enough money in those first 2 hours of the pledge period, with my only time on the air at that time, actually with cracking the mic open, if I raised enough money, they might say, come back again next week and try this for the next pledge period, which basically lasted about 10 days back in those days. And then I thought maybe at that point they would give me a time slot.
What happened?
It ended up working. It took a little bit longer than I thought. It took about 6-8 months to finally happen. But when it finally happened, because I'd talked to all the other hosts before. There was a jazz host, there was a reggae host, there was somewhat of an eclectic rock host, but nobody was playing what was considered punk or alternative, even before the term alternative was, thought of.
Yeah.
New wave, as they were calling it at the time. First time slot they gave me was 1 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the morning, at the end of the broadcast day.
Yeah.